Welcome to the Good, Better, Betterness podcast. We're here to get real about what really matters, not accolades or achievement, not doing more or having it all, but stripping away the extras so that you can be more present, more grounded, more rested, and more you. We're your hosts and co-founders of WellRise, Denise
and Kayla. The Good, Better, Betterness podcast is a monthly chat with and for Black women about what self-care is and how you can make it an intentional part of every single day. We share real stories with real women who are devoted to living a life rooted in better wellness and living in harmony with the world around them. Take a seat, take a breath, and explore how deep and radical self-care can transform your life.
Hey, everyone, and welcome back to the Good, Better, Betterness podcast. We're your hosts, Kayla
and Denise.
Today's episode is all about celebrating our beautiful bodies and all their shapes and sizes. We're diving in deep into the world of inclusive fitness and wellness, highlighting diverse routines and activities that embrace different body types and abilities.
Absolutely, because ladies, we believe that being healthy and feeling good shouldn't be a one-size-fits-all situation.
That's right. To guide us through this amazing conversation, we have a phenomenal guest joining us today. We're joined by the owner, Chief Wellness Officer of Gym Hookie, Ariel Belgrave. Yes, a leading voice in women's health and workplace wellness. Her frameworks empower women to overcome burnout and build healthy habits. With over a decade of HR experience at companies like JP Morgan Chase and Meta, she modernizes employee wellness programs. She's been featured on Good Morning America, The Today Show, Forbes, and more, and serves on the board of Women's Health magazine while being a sponsored Under Armour athlete. Let's go. Welcome to the show, Ariel.
Thank you. I'm so excited for this conversation, and thank you for the warm welcome. Y'all are the best.
Of course. Of course. We're so grateful for you joining us. We're actually just honored, right, to be in the presence of this amazing, great woman. But we're going to get into this conversation just by starting with an icebreaker. We call this Put That Ish On.
Okay.
I don't know if it needs to be that aggressive, but it's fine. So let's just dive into the good stuff. Let's play a quick game and let, Ariel give us a little bit of a secret. Maybe she can let us in on a secret. Here's the question. What's your favorite exercise tool or piece of equipment that you think is super underrated, but is totally effective?
Ooh. I'd say there's several, but if I had to name one, it would hands down have to be resistance bands, loop bands, better known as booty bands.
Listen, it'll lift the booty.
Yes. And you know what? And I mentioned this only because people mainly think of the loop bands, resistant bands as booty bands, but they could be used for so many other things when it comes to building your strength, improving your mobility, and even great for travel. So you can use it to build arm strength and leg strength. So it's beyond the booty, I'd say, when it comes to the resistance bands.
Okay, we might need to, right, that beyond the booty, we need that real quick. We need that. Well, at Betterness Box, we have definitely put several resistance bands in our boxes because they're so easy and lightweight, right? It's like grab it, put it in your gym bag. So I love that. And speaking of secrets, we're launching a new season with Betterness Box, and it's a whole new look. Yes, girl. You gave us, wait, I don't understand what this is saying. Gave us a fitness tool to check out. Oh, okay. I was confused. Sorry, Patricia. Okay, let's just. So you gave us a fitness tool to check out. So while we're speaking of incorporating things into our routine, be sure to check out this She Is Shining Betterness Box. It's our summer box. It's the beauty box. It's all the things. I'm so excited about the season. It's full of self-care goodies to help you glow, growing strong all summer, and the perfect way to incorporate a little self-care into your routine. So make sure to learn more at betternessbox.com today.
Love it. Love it.
All right, Ariel. Thank you again so much for joining us. And one of the key things that you highlighted is resistance bands. I take those, just drop those in your carry-on, drop them in your luggage when you travel, because like you said, you could do so much with them. And we've definitely hinted on that at Betterness Box, but I don't think that people really understand, like, your fitness routine goes out the door when you travel. Unless you have some, resistance bands or something easy to be able to kind of just do a quick little 15 before you head out for your day while you're on your trip. So loved that tip. But let's go ahead and get into these questions. To kick things off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and then also your journey navigating the worlds of both wellness and fitness?
Yeah, so currently, as mentioned, I am a health and fitness coach, CEO of Gym Hookie, focused on helping women take the best care of themselves, build healthy habits sustainably. But before that, I had a whole nother life, which was mentioned as well, is that I spent a decade working in HR. So I think what's worth sharing is what that transition looked like for me. And it actually started out of college. So further context, I actually played rugby in college. And after school, I went into the real world. I started in investment banking. And I absolutely have the story of the athlete who just struggled post being, I guess, a collegiate athlete, because you didn't have the accountability to take the best care of yourself. I know in my case, I didn't really knew what it looked like to take care of myself beyond being an athlete. I grew up being an athlete, but I never really saw anyone practicing self-care, running because it was good for your body. More it was what I knew of is how do you be in the best shape for sports. So fast forward, I myself struggled with taking the best care of myself, being into this real world, being in investment banking. And I had a gym membership, never used it, and found myself, I was losing myself. So from the way I looked all the way internally. And that transition for me encouraged me to learn how to take the best care of myself. When I didn't have time to go to the gym. So I started home workouts. I started with the basics, some dumbbells, a yoga mat, a yoga ball. I dedicated 20 minutes. I'd say dedicated and committed to 20 minutes a day, keeping it simple. And I worked with a lot of women at the time who saw, I'd say, my transformation from the inside out. So I ended up sharing what I was doing on Tumblr. My age here a little bit, but Tumblr was where it was rocking. And once I started Tumblr, I realized that there were a lot of women who were actually in the same position as me, who were very ambitious and trying to do their thing, securing all the corporate bags, but then didn't know how to balance that with their well-being. So I ended up creating a movement that is known as Gym Hookie now, which was a positive movement around skipping the gym and working out from home. And Gym Hookie was born in 2015, and I started on Instagram. And this is important because I side hustled doing this work for about 5 years. And I had no intention of taking a full time, to be honest. I'm like, I just really love to empower women, encourage them to take back the power of their health as they are building their business and their careers and their wealth. And in 2020, I had a whole epiphany moment where I really felt compelled to go full time into this work. So I chuck up the deuces to the corporate world. I was working in HR and started Gym Hookie full time. And it just so happened that it aligned during the pandemic. And I mentioned to you, I built a business around home workouts. So divine timing at its finest, where my very last day, I worked at Meta. My very last day at Meta was the first day of shelter in place. And I thought I was going to sabbatical it. I thought I was going to sabbatical it. And God was like, no, we need you now.
Your preparation met the opportunity, right? When you were speaking of it, I was like, I was doing Gym Hookie in 2020 and 2021 and did not even know that I was doing Gym Hookie. Had a gym membership, canceled a gym membership, right? All of the things. And was actually in probably the best shape of my life, literally working from my living room, the mat in my living room, right? So I completely understand it. And it's kind of that intention that you're setting of actually just like, you embrace, like, I can actually do this in bite-sized increments. So for somebody who's leading that, I imagine leading the charge on fitness versus maintaining because now fitness is your work.
Yeah.
Can you actually kind of help us get a glimpse of what your actual personal fitness routine looks like, being that fitness is also part of your work, and kind of like where you draw the separation, how you start to balance out, like, I have to be in the gym or I have to be working out for work. Where do you actually how do you actually still carve out the time for yourself being in that space?
I love this question so much because I want to use this moment to bust some myths here. So I think there's a lot of assumptions made because fitness professionals are fitness professionals and they're doing that all day, and that is how they're being in the best shape. When the reality is, although had moved on from being in corporate HR to fitness, I actually am still doing the same thing. I'm still doing a lot of sitting, and it's because the makeup of my work is beyond being a trainer in a gym. So mine, I'd say, is different, where it's mainly online fitness coaching, but then I also do corporate wellness. I also do speaking. I also lead workshops. So it's still looking the same as someone who may be working in corporate and working from home. So I think it's important to mention that, because then when I share what my routine is, it is exactly what I'm preaching. Personally, for me, I work out 30 minutes, 4 to 5 times a week. And this is me prioritizing strength training. So as we get older as women, we absolutely need to prioritize strength training, is how I maintain building my muscle. Because I do a lot of sitting as well, I try to incorporate walks, because oftentimes, yes, the 30 minutes is a good feel good at the top of the day. It does need to be supplemented with other activities. So I would do walks. I also try to step outside of, I'd say, my comfort zone or my expertise, which is mainly high intensity and strength training. And I try to dabble in other categories in the wellness space, which I absolutely love to support local wellness fitness professionals. So if it's doing a yoga class or boxing, I like to dabble in those areas as well, just to switch things up and challenge my body in that way. So it looks closer to the everyday person than what people realize.
That's amazing. I'm literally inspired because it didn't seem like it was unachievable. I mean, I look at you and I'm like, girl, she must be in the gym every day, 2 a days, 3 a days. But you're like maintaining and that consistency, like you said, even with your work from home schedule and sitting at a desk, etc., you're putting yourself first. So I'm inspired because I'd be sitting here like, oh, do I want to go to the gym? Do I want to get up and do anything? And yeah, so 30 minutes in my head, I'm like, that's so doable.
It's very, so what I didn't mention is home workouts. These muscles are brought to you by home workouts. The only time I haven't had a gym, I haven't had a gym membership in over 10 years. If I do go to a gym, it is a shoot that I have for Under Armour. It is me traveling and using the local hotel gym. Every now and then I'll dabble in my apartment. There's we do have a gym within our apartment. I tend to use that when I'm about to have a shoot coming up to make sure my body is in best shape for shoots. But home workouts.
Wow, that is amazing. In my head, I'm like, okay, technically everybody on the call is an ex-athlete. Now, I didn't go to college. I played basketball in high school. I didn't go, I went to college, but I didn't do college basketball. Denise had a whole scholarship for crew out there on the water. Yes. Yes. And then you run? Sis, what? When you said rugby, I was like, excuse?
I know.
That is amazing.
I'll be honest, I knew nothing about the sport. I started Boston College, strictly academics. I thought that the athlete years would be behind me. I mainly did track. I did track, basketball, softball, and I was recruited to play because I was playing flag football with the guys, because once an athlete, always an athlete. And they're like, we have a sport for you that we'd love for you to try out for. And hence, I had never heard of the sport before at all. So
yeah, in America, it's not like something that's really, exactly. It's like soccer, football, right? It's like we just now getting to the point where we
right. Was the same with crew for you?
I was the same with crew. I played basketball, volleyball, softball, everything growing up from 3rd grade on. And then I, similar to you, was like, it's straight academics for college. And then I was literally like, I just stumbled upon the crew team and was like, yeah, this sounds fun. Let me go hang out and do this. I did it for 1 year. So don't let Kayla think, have you think I was for it, it
1 year
was
is a lot.
definitely
Listen, and crew schedules, were
and
you
all.
up early? Like,
Yes, girl.
Yes.
see, that was it for me. I saw the that was one, hats off.
6 days a week, 5 a.m. Like you had to be
Oh, I
alert.
remember.
Right? I was actually the coxswain, so like I work out with the team, but you're also the brains of the boat. So you had to be like, I had to be alert at 5 a.m.
I've
6
heard.
days, which is probably why I only did it for the 1 year. Because I am not a morning person. So I would just chuck it up to the early mornings. But it was beautiful, right? Like
Yeah.
waking up on San Diego Bay like every single morning, just watching the sunrise. Like I
Wow.
wouldn't, change it for the world, but it was a 1 year thing.
It was quite
All that to say, flag football. I've played flag football as recently as 5, 6, 7 years ago here in Chicago, co-ed. Like
I'm actually looking to do so. I'm getting it. I'm missing rugby, and I am going to be looking to dabble in flag football here in DC. And now it's actually like popped off, and we're seeing it on
Yeah.
TV, and it's getting so much attention. So I'm like, I think it'll be cool to do.
It's your time. It's your time to shine, girl.
we will be in the stands. We will come with signs and be in the stands.
Right. Well, I'll be on the sidelines, I'll do my little weekly workouts, but I'm going to be.
I love it.
Okay. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I love it. All the athletes out there, I'm sure you are relating to this conversation. And we're going to get even deeper with like, how do you transition that if you've fallen off a little bit, right? So Ariel, as an award-winning, women's health and fitness expert, what would you say is the biggest misconception about inclusive and achievable fitness and wellness? I know we've been talking about like you work from home. Is it really, realistic to expect muscles from the home gym? Clearly it is. We're looking at an example right now of what it looks like to really be consistent with that. But in general, talk a little bit about the inclusivity of it, right? And again, achievable piece of fitness and wellness, and what's that myth that we want to bust for the folks that are listening.
Yeah, I feel like inclusivity can come in so many layers, but I think when hearing the first question, what stands out to me is like inclusivity as far as like DEI goes. And when I think of the fitness space, I think the biggest misconception is inclusivity mainly being about the physical appearance, mainly about the body diversity, which it is, but it's other things in addition to that. So some of the work that I've done and been able to, I'd say, speak to more is beyond just making sure there's a diverse range of body types represented in as trainers in these fitness spaces, but also making sure people feel included. Like, what does it look like for these like fitness studios, for example, to create environments that are more inclusive, where people feel like they belong, regardless of their race, regardless of their age, their ability, their fitness levels, and naturally addressing those systemic barriers. Because I knew when I started my fitness career, this is challenges that I personally had, even as a trainer, where I actually started in teaching, volunteering in underserved communities in Brooklyn. So it was something I was deeply passionate about. And I'm like, you know what? After work, I want to be in spaces where I can let people who look like me know the value of moving their bodies, knowing that it can be fun, knowing that they don't have to sign up for the equinoxes to feel like they're deserving of this level of fitness, knowing that if they are obese, they still deserve to be in these rooms to work and grow on themselves. And I realize the value in that, but I also know how exclusive it was when you look at some of these bigger names like the Berries, like the Equinoxes, and a lot of people who look like us feeling they have to get their bodies in a certain place before they can even sign up to be members in these environments, or they just don't see people who look like them who are training, right? Who are leading these classes. So yeah, that's my rant on body diversity, but I think there's so many layers to it, but definitely misconceptions where it's just, okay, cool. Now you have Black bodies, you have diverse bodies on these ads. Now, how are you creating the spaces so people feel like they actually feel welcome and belong?
I love that. That belonging is so key. And I think that's something that more and more corporations, right, are leaning into, but I don't know if they're leaning into it on a wellness side. I think it's more so, do they feel included in the meeting or, the very corporate work aspect? And when I talk to some of the corporations or folks that I know, right, like these other Black women that work at corporations, they're like, belonging, what is that? Right? Some of them are just yes, a lot of folks are not really talking about it in a way that spans the entire offering of what it looks like to work at, X company.
Yep.
And so I think that's great that you are focusing on that. You speak on it, you make sure that it's centered. For sure. I was just watching a documentary. That's all I do. I watch documentaries, I work, and I go to the farmer's market. So I was watching a recent one that's called Brandy Melville. It actually, it's called Brandy Hellfield because like apparently this brand that was online and how they exploited young girls on how you have to be a certain size to fit their clothing. And it just reminded me of that. The tag literally says one size fits all, and everything they produced was extra small. And so girls that are teenagers are trying to fit into this stuff and be popular, and it's on the TikTok, right? And all the things. And so they're like, all kinds of disorders and things come out of that because now they see themselves as like, I'm too big to fit into the things all my friends are wearing. I have to do something about it. And so it became like, huge in social media and blew up. And now, more people have recognized the toxicity of it, but now it's over like in Asian countries like China, and they're doing the same thing to young girls there. And so it's very interesting how, yes, it starts at the top when you think of belonging. It starts where it's like, where you see yourself. How do I make sure everyone sees themselves and can see themselves here,
That's right.
and welcome them into that space? So I think that's amazing.
And when you
Is
say
there any?
sorry. I was going to say, when you
No,
say
go ahead.
at the top, I mean, think about the people who are leading these organizations, right? Who are the people at the table? And oftentimes they don't look like us, right? And when I say look like us, I mean in more than one way, from the race to being a woman in these spaces, right? A lot of the times it's white male, fitness is a white male dominated industry. And I think the irony of it all is the biggest consumers of fitness and wellness are absolutely women. There's no doubt about it. Even when it comes to trainer, like fitness professionals or wellness professionals, women also they exceed the certifications than men do. But ironically, the ones who are making decisions that's best for the experiences for women, for Black women, are white men. So knowing that if there's no representation and or I'd say diverse perspective there, then it's going to trickle through to the marketing we see, to the culture of the spaces that have been created for these boutique fitness studios, to the trainers that are selected. It like just trickles all the way through.
Yeah, I agree. And I think about them like that's in medical, right? That's in the medical field. Who's making the decision? Even in fashion. You look at fashion houses and you be like, oh, wait, but that's not even a woman. How they making clothes for women? What's happening right now?
Crazy.
So yes, diversity of thought is so important. I know that, some ways we can kind of combat that is to speak up, right? And say, hey, nobody looks like me here, and be the brave, trailblazers when it comes to that. Are there any other ways that you would think, or you would say, like, just to the regular old girl listening to this, right? That maybe does work at a corporation or is at a gym somewhere and the machines aren't really working for her because they're not fitting, you know what I mean? Whatever that looks like, or the classes are very, very specific to maybe one demographic. Are there ways to kind of start to speak up to that outside of, some of the things we've talked about?
Man, I feel like you've nailed it. I mean, there are different ways. I feel like nowadays with like social media, there are different ways that speaking up can happen, right? You can amplify your voice beyond going directly to the source now. And a lot of companies are very cognizant of how people view them on the internet. But I do find that, in general, speaking up in some way, I think holds so much value. And I just say utilizing your platform. Now, it doesn't have to be a case where you're roasting companies, but I do think it's important to kind of call out what representation exists or lack thereof in spaces where you want to feel more included. I myself have done so. I've known plenty of people to do so. I think even as a trainer, I have had to call out environments as well, right? So for me, I realized as I was building my fitness career, I told you I started working in the community, which was more volunteering. I was doing it for free. But then as I wanted to learn to monetize my craft, it was mainly in these like white dominated spaces. And that was a problem in itself, because what I found, and thankfully I reeled it back in and came back to my senses, but I was shifting the way that I taught to adapt to these spaces. When it came down to the music, when it came to how I was teaching. And then I also didn't feel like I was teaching my people. And like, for me, I'm a vibe, right? If there's soca, dance hall, trap music, that's my vibe to the max. And I felt like I was losing that part of myself. And these are things that I needed to speak to in a way that was tasteful, right? I'm not out here burning bridges, but I also know that me providing this information is valuable because of the times that we're in general. So that was some things that I think just like having a voice in some way and using your own experience as the example, because if you're having that experience, I guarantee you there are so many other people that they may have as prospective clients that are not walking through those doors because it's the same challenge and more.
Yep, I agree. I love this community aspect that you leaned in on. And just, we follow a couple of movements, one being Girl Trek. We love Girl Trek and what they're doing for Black women. But in DC, where you're at, there's actually the Hike Crew. And one of my really good friends actually started the Hike Crew. And they get together continuously. Yeah, Kendall Miles, shout out, hey, Sor. To get together, right? It's like, go where you're welcome, go where the people are. They're run clubs. And when I look at a run club, and yes, I see it's like all Black people, I'm like, okay, I might be able to do it, but I'm not a runner like that. Go on and walk, y'all. Just walk. That's right. It's okay. You don't have to go run.
And that's the inclusive aspect of it, though, is knowing that there are people who are starting in different parts of their journey. Because like using running as an example, most people may feel like, well, I'm gonna try to do this on my own to get to a place where I can keep up, when like that is not inclusive. That's not why these, like even hiking, the Hike Crew, that's not why they're creating it. They're creating it so you have community while you're growing and making progress for whatever goal you want to set. You don't need to have achieved something before feeling like you're good enough for it. So I love that you're also hitting on, if it doesn't exist, create it and or find it, right?
Yes. Love it. Amazing.
All of it.
I do yoga, in my past life. I don't do it as much anymore, but yoga instructor. But I just have not, since I got pregnant, have not really kind of come back to my mat as much. But I think that one of the things that you're kind of taught in yoga is literally like, yoga is just where you're at, right? Because I think those yoga studios, they can look very, very intimidating to people, right? You walk to the door and somebody's doing a headstand, somebody's got one leg over here, somebody's looking in the mirror. It can be extremely intimidating, literally just like being like, I'm gonna go to the studio. And that's like completely defeating the purpose. If I'm getting anxiety thinking about what I'm going to see when I walk into this workout studio or this, fitness studio, that is like the exact opposite intention of like what the workout is intended to do. But one of the things that I really like appreciated about yoga is really just like my yoga teacher, she basically was like, mind your own mat, right? So if I'm comparing, you're already going to be off to a bad start, because it doesn't acknowledge, like you were just saying, that I can't compare my start to somebody's finish or my beginning to somebody's, whatever. Once you start and start to bring comparison into those rooms, you really, really are going to just like do yourself a disservice. And so really trying to figure out how you can mind your own mat. Literally, I tell people breathing is yoga, right? So like, I don't care if home chick is doing a headstand.
But like, oh, do you?
What's going on over there? If I'm here and I'm on my Savasana today because I'm hot and it's
Yes,
summer and I want to lay down and breathe. You have to be able to get to a place where you're just comfortable with those extremes, right?
that's right.
Anything else, right? And the different classes kind of bring different scenarios to life. But I like to use the yoga experience because it's very clear that like I could walk in and see, like I said, you could see a whole lot of flexibility, a whole lot of everything, but you honestly have no idea what that person's journey has been to get to there. They might be in here every single day figuring out how to touch their toes. Now today they figured out how to touch their toes, and you just walked in and you're trying to figure out
No, it's
like, I
facts.
can't touch my toes, but you don't know that this person has been here every day for the last 90
Every day.
days for 5 minutes trying to figure out how to touch their toes.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So like it's
I love
really
that.
like when you start to bring some reality into those spaces of like it's not, it doesn't matter. This is who I am and this is how I'm showing up. One, it allows you to speak on your behalf and be like, you know what, I really don't like this music. I'm gonna find a different instructor who got music that I want to listen to because
Oh my
that's
God.
gonna be what
You're saying so many things, so many things. Okay, can I say a few?
absolutely.
You touch base on so many things. Okay, for one, I love that you mentioned that you're talking about like the classes themselves. And one thing for anyone listening to this, if you are someone who has had a desire to try a local fitness studio, whether it be yoga, whether it be Pilates, anything that you find to be intimidating, I challenge you to go on the website and look at the type of classes. Oftentimes they're beginner versions. Like they now, a lot of, when we talk about the inclusivity in fitness, there are a lot of studios who are setting up intentional like beginner type of classes. So that way you may not feel like the only. Now, granted, the more boutique, the more harder it may be, but like search for the beginner type of classes. The other, can't have this conversation and not talk about the internets and what we see on the internets, because I think it's just so easy to compare your chapter 1 to someone's chapter 50 or 60, right? As Denise mentioned, you don't know how frequently, how long the practice has been. It is a journey, not a destination. So literally like mind your own mat, stay in your lane, know that you should be celebrating the progress that you're making. But oftentimes I think the internet it steals the joy of like how fast people are making progress, how quickly that headstand or handstand is happening when someone maybe have been practicing that daily for it. So I definitely want to mention those things because as you're like touching those, I'm like, yes, 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 yes.
Do you know what the best deal of the year is? You can subscribe to our Betterness box for just $25, which is valued at more than $100 per season. All the brands that you get in this are super high quality. Christmas doesn't have to just be once a year, because with your annual subscription, you literally get a Betterness box delivered to your doorstep every season. How else can you make this year the best year? Subscribe today.
Comparison poison. We talk about that at Betterness Box often, and it's literally like it really, really just does you a disservice.
It does.
I want to talk about this stat. So it's shown here that 1/3 of African American women, only 1/3 of African American women, so 33, a mere 33%, meet the national recommendation of 150 minutes of exercise per week. When you compare that to all of Americans, broadly, Americans are getting about 50% are meeting. So there's still not doing well on the broad perspective, but we're as African American women doing a little bit worse as well. So can you talk a little bit? We know we have busy schedules. We know that we've talked about a lot of different challenges today, right? The comparison, the inclusivity of those spaces, and just like being able to feel belonging. But when it comes to Black professional women in particular, can you talk about some of the things that prohibit them from even starting a fitness routine, right? So like routine is not something that you do one time. We kind of are talking about like, oh, one time I want to go to a class, but what are some of the things that are prohibiting them from like that consistency that's actually required to kind of see some of those end results that you are pushing towards?
Yeah. So this is a great question. So when I think of this question, what immediately came to mind is socioeconomic status. And this came to mind because the challenges could look different depending on where you are, right? So when I think of on the lower end of the spectrum where it's low income, right? what's coming to mind is limited access to affordable fitness facilities, which that's a resource, like lack of resources, allowing for you to be consistent or even start that fitness routine. Or if you have to work most of the time and you don't have like the resource, the help for someone to watch your kids so you can build those healthier habits. When I think of like the medium to more higher end on the socioeconomic status, there are different, I think, challenges that come with that, some of which may be similar in some sense to those that are on the lower end, but still resources, the amount of, I think there's resources, but then knowledge across the board and what that looks like. I use myself as an example where I'm like, hey, I knew what sports was, but I did not have, it wasn't the norm to see someone taking care of themselves, to take care of themselves, like running or healthy eating. Listen, my Caribbean self, my mom would absolutely have the salad on the lineup of things. Who was eating the salad? Who was eating the salad? If it had a little bit of room on my plate, maybe I'll throw it in there. Right? So I know that, like, I'd say knowledge plays a huge part when it comes to limiting, and like, they're part of ourselves, right? We could always blame the external, but then what does it look like to be committed and disciplined and not just chase because you have a wedding coming up because you have a hot girl summer coming up. Like there are things that we need to unlearn for when it becomes important to take care of ourselves, because oftentimes it's chasing a milestone that's beyond longevity and it being a lifestyle. I think who we surround ourselves with matter as well. Like for me, have been okay with being the health nut in my family. And now it's a joke, but it's a thing where they're like, oh, Ari's in town, let's make sure we're drinking our water. You damn right. Stay hydrated. Right? And now it's like a joke in my family, but someone has to do it.
I just saw you on social with your brothers taking that turmeric shot. I was laughing. I was laughing so hard because your brother said he was so ready. He was like, all right. He took it. Was it a turmeric or ginger or something?
It was a ginger shot. Yeah, it was a ginger shot.
He was like, his face was like,
that's exactly right. But I think there's just that. It's like, how do you bring the fun to these things that like need to be a part of our lives beyond just moments, right? We don't want to wait until we're in a place of crisis. And I think that's the problem. Like there's so many conversations I've had with women as clients where it's like, oh, well, diabetes, a high cholesterol runs in my family. But that doesn't have to be your story. And that's a mindset shift too, where that's something that we could control. That is prevention. And you know what? I would be the first to say that like for the lack of resources, it could be harder for women who look like us to be able to dedicate that time. But then there are other things that we can do outside of it, right? If you are not able to physically make it to a place where you're active, how are your eating habits? Are you drinking water? Like going back to the basics versus feeling like you have to check all those boxes. And if all of it isn't checked, you're not going to do it at all. Because if we're not taking care of it now, it's going to impact us in the long run. And as a woman who barely saw women take the best care of themselves in my family, Caribbean women, there was more the mentality of like self-care being selfish. And how I like to flip the script and challenge folks is, hey, you think it's selfish to take care of yourself where you're young? How selfish is it to not take care of the things that you have control over now, and then someone else is going to be responsible for taking care of you? Now, granted, there are things outside of our control, but there are also things that you could prevent. And it's more selfish for you to let those things pass by now and put it on someone in the future. So either way, there's going to be I wouldn't say a burden, but you're going to need help in some way.
Preach. That is a word.
What do they say? Why put off for tomorrow what you can do today, right?
That's right.
No, I think it's like absolutely crazy how we like don't think about the future. We like think about the future, but then we don't think about the future. So it's literally like what you're putting off today, and what you can do in little increments today can actually build. And I think it's work. I think that's the problem though. It's like it's work no matter how you look at it, right? But it's like I could do a whole lot of work and take a whole lot of medicine down the line because I'm not doing the little things. And I want to know from like some of your clients,
Yeah.
where have you seen that kind of breakthrough comes where they start to understand the habit or the ritual piece of it or the routine piece of it, right? Because like until you get there, it does feel like I have to do this, or you know what I mean? And like, how do you start to transition them to like, it's not I have to do this, I get to do, like, where do you start to see, where does the rubber meet the road on that? Where you start to see like, oh, like she gets it. You know what I mean? Like, what are some of the things that
I
I don't
love
know.
that. I think in my work, so it's always interesting because I'd say 98 to 99% of women who come my way have goals of weight loss. And oftentimes it's me challenging them for what that can look like beyond, like there are other barriers beyond like losing weight, right? And one of the things that I have to shift for starters is their mindset on what it looks like to achieve those goals. So one thing that I share often is so oftentimes we wait around for motivation. We're like, okay, I want to be motivated to go to the gym. I want to be motivated to do X. And one shift that I have challenged my clients to think is actually it starts with action first. Because motivation, yeah, one day you may wake up in top of the year and be like, new year, new me, right? But let's be real, life happens, life be life, and you're not always going to have motivation. Even me as a trainer, I'm not waking up ready to like slay a workout every day. I have to rely on discipline. So if you're someone who is just getting started, I usually say take that action, right? Or if you're restarting, focus on getting 5 minutes in, right? And what usually happens is what you receive as a result of that action is what's going to motivate you to keep going. So when it comes to like forming a habit, the habit comes from your excitement that you're getting results, but you never know you won't ever get there if you never start. So progress or excitement can come from maybe you're seeing inches come off your waist, but maybe you also have more energy. Maybe you're less stressed. Maybe you are just feeling more confident in your body. Like overall, that dress that you have in the back of your closet, you haven't been able to fit for a while, you actually fit. And that comes as a result of you taking action. So naturally, the habit comes from then connecting it to things that can help you do it consistently. So when we think of, I'm going to nerd out a little bit on just like what habits are, right?
Yeah.
So when we think of like, when we think of habit building, you usually want to connect it to something that is already existing that you do naturally, right? So say, for example, we brush our teeth. That is something that happens. Is there something that you can do surrounding that activity that can naturally play a part? I would use an example for me. I always say, listen, the moment you wake up, you should be drinking 20 sips of water. Your body is literally dehydrated because you spent however many hours without water while you sleep. So part of my habit building was the night before I get water, I would have it on my nightstand. So it's there, it's covered. Right when my feet touch the floor, I'm looking at that water, I'll drink it, right? But that's something that's happening. I need to get out of bed and then it's right there flat out in my face. So when you think of what habits can look like, think about what you're naturally doing and how you can add it to things that that's existing. And I guess that change and that snap of, oh wow, I'm doing this, is it when it becomes effortless, right?
I love it. Mm-hmm. I think that all of this and many of our subjects kind of go down into the root of this idea of self-worthiness, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even seeing a healthy lifestyle as something we're worthy of.
Yeah.
And so I just continue to come back to that every time we're talking about like, why is it so hard to do this for ourselves? And why don't we see this as important? You're worth it, sis. You are worth the fact that you want to have a healthy lifestyle in your later age. You want to feel good today because you got this serotonin going through, right? Like you are worthy of those feelings and you're worthy of the way you look is even better, right? You're worthy of those things. And to see this, not just the brunch on Sundays, shout out to Nas, not just, right, the day parties and the shopping trips and the girls trips, and you're worthy of those things, but you're also worthy of a healthy lifestyle to feel good on that trip because maybe you drank a little more this day, but you're usually pretty good. So you're going to be all right. You're not going to need a week to recover.
That's
right?
right. And you don't have to restrict yourself too. We see so much extremes online where it's like, oh, do this and then you'll achieve that. And here's the reality. Short-term, quick fixes, just as fast as it was fixed, is just as fast that it could come to an end, right? So it's being cognizant of what practices that you're creating that's just not realistic. What I always tell clients is whatever you choose to do that has anything to do with your wellness routine, if you can't picture yourself doing this a year from now, boo-boo, it's not it. It's not it.
And we do that all the time because we're usually, overachievers, perfectionists. And so we're always setting these unrealistic goals. We get mad when we don't reach them. And then the shame and the guilt start settling in. Y'all, come on, listen to Ariel. We got to do better. It's such amazing advice. Thank you for that.
Of course.
Well, as we talk about routines and all of the things, we know you're the creator of the highly successful 28-day Lean program. I can't wait to learn what Lean, the acronym, means. Can you tell us more about the program, how it caters to busy women, particularly Black women, and who might have unique health, anyone who really has those unique health and wellness needs?
Yeah. So you introduced this so perfectly. So Lean is a fitness and nutrition program, and it was designed by a busy woman for busy women. So when I do create these type of programs, I'm thinking about the things that I wish I had as someone who is on the grind, whether it be on the corporate side of things or even entrepreneur side of things. So Lean does stand for acronym. The L is for lifestyle, E is exercise, A is attitude, and N is nutrition. And why this is important is part of my approach is holistic. So although at the face, we think fitness, we think nutrition, a lot of times there are other things that's blocking us from achieving the goals to be our healthiest and happiest selves. So you hear attitude, right? What is our mindset, lifestyle? All of our lives look different. I can't give the same advice to someone who's a mom of one to someone who is single, right? Time is different, how they navigate the world is different, the responsibilities are different. So the Lean is set up to meet you where you're at, although everyone could have success in it. As far as Black women, I think this is a great question because at the end of the day, I do serve all women. When I think about how Black women have had some of the best value, it's knowledge. Outside of physical, outside of working out. A lot of us don't know what proper nutrition should look like as an adult. When you think about what we learned about nutrition, it's like the pyramid in elementary school, in middle school, right? But what does it look like to take care of ourselves, and how does that evolve in your 30s, in your 40s, in your 50s? What things should we be tending to? What vitamins, what supplements? So making sure that there is knowledge on how we navigate that rather than just slapping a label saying that my family, this is just how it's been for us and that's how it's going to be for me. So yeah, knowledge, I'd say, tends to be a big one. Now, there is nutrition, but then there's also meeting where you're at when it comes to your fitness journey. So everything you do is at home. So that is like the accessibility piece where it's like, hey, if you don't have time to go to the gym, then listen, you could do these full workouts that I'm doing with you at the gym, but all you need is a dumbbell, right? To be able to get this done. And you can get your dumbbell on Amazon. I'm providing resources that's budget friendly. So yeah, just creating a program that's like doable and sustainable. And it is 28 days, but oftentimes women do it over and over again, and then they're focused on something different every time. So it's set up in that way. What I've learned, and I'm like super into the psychology part of behavioral change. Sometimes if I say this is a 3-month program, then there are a lot of excuses that come up with like, oh, well, I have this trip happening the second month, so I don't know if I'm gonna be able to keep up with it. So I purposely designed it for 28 days to prove, so whoever is taking it, they're empowered to know that in 28 days, there's a lot that they can achieve through the program. Yeah.
That is amazing. I'm actually very excited. I'm going to go to this functional nutritionist tomorrow, and because I have GI issues and it is ghetto over here. So I can't wait to learn something from that, like food sensitivity. I'm going to be doing all those kinds of tests. And then apparently I got to get into lean, because lean is lean is for me. Okay. I am busy. I do not have time to go down to the gym. Like, what would it look like to really have something structured and have someone lead me through it? Clearly need lean. So excited. So are there specific results that, some women can expect from it? I feel like it depends, right? Like you said, women will go through cycles and say, well, no, I'm going to change my exercise habits here. Next time I do it, I'll change my nutrition, like, which is very healthy. That way you're not trying to change everything at once. But
Right.
any kind of results that you can speak to that, women can expect, and any that you want to, tell us about the wins. I'm sure there are many, many wins from this amazing program.
Yeah, so many. So I would say naturally on the physical side of things, while I don't, so I think what tends to be on the sexier side is like, oh, it can help with weight loss. So I'd say naturally, you have women who are losing from 5 to 15 pounds, and I keep that big range because it really can look different depending on where you are, where you're starting, how much water weight that you have to start with. But then there's also the mental and emotional side of things, right? What does it look like to shift your mindset? What does it look like to reduce stress? What does it look like to set boundaries so you can actually have time to work out, right? So it's kind of covering bases on that, on different ends. I think for me, what always stands out for like great stories are ones where a woman is, so how do I say, there's so many. There was one, I'd say, where I had a client who actually came my way because she went to the doctors, and she was at risk of having to be put on high blood pressure pills. And again, it's usually a crisis that leads us to take like action. And she had contacted me because, I mean, I would share stories on like where you can actually create a change before you have to start taking the medication. I usually say skills before pills. There's things that we can do for prevention. So the doctor said that he'd give her 3 months to make a change. And what oftentimes happen, I'm working to complement the guidance that doctors give or lack thereof, because they can tell you, hey, you need to eat healthier. Hey, you need to move your body more. But then what does that actually mean, right? What structure is in place for me to make this happen, to make it most effective for change? So that's where I come in, where she ended up being my client. Literally, she ended up going back before 3 months, and she was no longer being told that she needed to be put on medication. It was like, keep doing what you're doing. But the keep doing what she's doing is really going back to the basics on things that we're not doing. Oftentimes we're like, oh my gosh, I need to go online and look up all these supplements and all this stuff. And it was like, let's back it up. Are you doing the basics, right? What is your plate looking like? Are you managing your portions? Are you drinking water? Are you getting more sleep? Right. And while it may sound simple, these aren't things that we're doing to start. So before you start trying to do all the complex stuff, let's take it back to the basics. And this was a beautiful story because it was a case, she was scared, right? She saw a lot of people in her family have a lot of medication, and that was it for her. She was like, I don't want to have to be taking 10 pills a day, 10, 15 pills a day. Because oftentimes when you do take those pills, it has other side effects, and it leads to you needing to take other pills and then other pills. So that was what kind of instilled that fear in her. But I also tried to shift that. So it wasn't just her operating out of fear. It was, oh, this is what you're going to do for longevity, to take the best care of yourself and be an example to your kids. So they know what they see mom taking the best care of herself. They see mom can like play with them in the playground. Mom can walk them to the bus stop, and have the energy to do things that other people may not.
Oh, that's so good. Especially when I think about how our audience is, coming up into that generation. I think we call it the sandwich generation, whatever it is, where we are going to be the ones taking care of our parents a little earlier than we thought we might have to, right? It's like, oh my goodness, what does this look like? And I know it's something that most of my Black professional women, bosses, right, friends are thinking about. And we think about, okay, I need to make enough money so that I can afford all the or just make sure, or do both, but let's make sure we actually have the energy, right, to get mom up and to help her take a bath. And we can't be helping somebody try to take a bath and we can barely hold her up. Like,
Right.
y'all, we got to think about these things. And I think it's great motivation. It's unfortunately because our, the generation before us maybe didn't have the time, resources, all the things we've been talking about to care for themselves, or, again, didn't make those choices, but we can see that now. And I love how your client saw, oh, wait, I don't want to do that. I don't want that to be my life. Let me change that. And then us being the change creates the generational change after us, because now we see the kids following, like, wait, no, this is just what we do. Like, I just work out because that's what, this is what we do. This is a part of my life.
That's right.
I think that's beautiful and amazing. And regardless if you have kids or not, you're setting an example for all the young people that watch you and see you in any kind of atmosphere. Aunties, right? Godchildren, all the things.
Listen, I'm the fitness auntie. It's actually, I'm actually going to end up putting together probably like a reel or something on this, but like I am literally, when I come into town, like my niece is so excited. And we, like, from the point she was like 2 years old all the way, now she's 7. And literally our conversation is, she's like, she flexes, she said, and she was like, I have a different kind of push-ups that I can do now, auntie, let me show you. During the pandemic, we were doing push-up lessons. Like, it's a thing. And I'm like, they're watching, kids are watching. Yeah. And like, even though she doesn't really know the importance of moving her body in that way at 7 years old, is still something that she's like excited to do, right? Just because. Yeah. And I think that's the best way for them to learn that, as a just because versus it appearing to be a chore or doing it because we have to. Like you mentioned, Denise, like, because as adults, that's what we're struggling with, right? I have to do this. Now I have to do it. I'm getting older. Versus, oh, like this is the norm. I saw like my auntie do it all the time. Like, duh.
Yep.
I think the thing too is, like, kids we teach them, make it fun, right? Like, we don't want to be doing things every day that's not fun as an adult or as a child. But as children, they also don't know the difference between what's play and what's work and what's workout and what's cleaning and whatever, right? They like the interaction and the engagement. So I think naturally they kind of gravitate. I have a niece who's 6, 7. She's like, auntie, we're doing yoga. Yeah. They're doing squats, but yes, we're doing whatever you want to call it. They had our little sound, that sound bowl. They pick up things and they are paying attention. But I think we're talking about the next generation, but I also see it. I do live in a sandwich generation household where my mother and my stepfather live here, and I had my mom just do Whole30, and she did a whole 7-day alkaline vegan detox. Like, she just wrapped everything up last week, right? So I think as they see you, no matter which way it goes, either the older generation or the younger generation, you are leading by example. And that can be in your own home, it could be in your community, it could be in your friend group. However, you never know who's watching, right? And you never know where your consistency and your dedication to your own practice is actually rubbing off on people in a healthy way.
Okay, but like, have y'all seen that meme, right? That is it a meme or video where sis is sitting eating her food, and her mom says, what did she say? I don't know if there was a question, but the little girl was eating celery or something. She said, I don't want to be a fat person. She said, well, do you know any fat people? The little girl looked at her mama up and down.
It be the kids. Listen, if you want, it be the kids are the biggest shade throwers. I don't care what nobody says. They're gonna tell you what.
Hey, girl, it be your own children. That's what they be saying. It be your own children.
Right. Having a kid in the house will shame you alone. They'll be like
reckless, no filter.
No filter at all.
I'm here for her eating celery. Like, no, I don't want to be.
That is crazy.
That's real.
I gotta send it to y'all.
We're talking about it from our grown age and looking at a higher generation that's taking pills and things of that sort. And we're saying, I don't want to, have to take a lot of different pills. So I'm going to learn these skills. Yeah. Like you said, it just trickles down, right? So hopefully they gravitate towards these habits, and it catches their generation at an age where, they have a longer time to actually be living in healthier habits.
Yeah. I'd say younger generations in general, they're healthier. Like they also have a lot more exposure to, like, social media plays a big part in just what learning can look like. So I joked about earlier, like the pyramid, right? Listen, things that kids are seeing now is not just like about the pyramid. There are other things on like wellness can look like. But even the generation before us, there's a lot less, there's more like sober curiosity, less alcohol, and like a commitment and dedication to that. So it's definitely looking different on what it looks like to like show up for ourselves. I think even 3 generations below, they're gonna be living real long. Real long.
Yeah, I agree.
So we talked a little bit about just like the community aspect, right? The household and how really this conversation was really about like how being in certain communities, you start to rub off on each other, and whether that's positive habits, bad habits, it's gonna all start to flow together. But can you go a little bit deeper on like the role that kind of community and accountability collectively play in somebody actually like seeing positive outcomes, or being healthy and things of that sort? Like, how do they work together? The necessity of them, right? Like if you don't feel like you're in a community, you don't feel like you have an accountability partner or somebody you can speak to, or you kind of feel shame about like being the healthy auntie. What role does that end up having, and what kind of, outcomes can be result?
So one of my favorite things that I wholeheartedly believe is that wellness thrives in community. It isn't something that is meant to be alone. Now, granted, there may be some forms of wellness where practice could happen alone, but a lot of the times, and when we even think about women, community is sought to not only start but maintain it and just be around like-minded folks. And I've also say that there's a quote that says like you are sum of like the company you keep or something of the sort. And I think that applies to health and wellness, right? If you only surround yourself with people who aren't making healthy decisions, then you're likely to fall into that. And there are plenty of clients I've had to challenge them to seek outside community beyond their home, even their partner, right? Like if you don't have a supportive partner in your home who is aligned on like what it looks like to take the best care of yourself and eat healthier, sometimes it needs to be sought by like an online group. And I think this is the power of just having like online communities, if not in person, because yes, women are busy, but what does it look like to have that support? What does it look like to share your progress and have level of excitement that may look different than the people in your family who are not on a similar journey and who can knock you or make fun of you? So I believe that we should always seek communities beyond the homes. And we also shouldn't wait for the people around us to start theirs before we start ours. Because that's a whole excuse that's created. Or if you do start with someone and they've fallen off, that doesn't mean that you need to fall off too. That is a sure sign that there are outside support groups, whether that look like local fitness classes that you're signing up once a week, so you're held accountable. I always encourage people to do fitness classes. While I'm about the home workout life, not everyone has the discipline and motivation to do so. So if you're someone who's like, listen, I need to see someone who is hitting that burpee next to me for me to feel like I can do it, find a class, right? There's something about having that, being in a room of energy, but I think it plays a whole part. There's a effect called the Kohler effect, Kohler. And the Kohler effect, it applies in more ways than one, but when it comes to well-being is that we'll naturally try harder when we're in like a group team setting, right? So when we think about how hard we go and how much we push ourselves in a fitness class, in a yoga class, in a Pilates class, naturally, when we're surrounded by other people who are going ham and harder, you want to try because there's this like competitive nature where it's like, dang, if she's doing it, I can too. So I'd be the first to say doing it home alone may not work for everyone, but finding that community is so key because it can make or break how much you maintain your health and well-being once you start.
Listen, it's giving hybrid model, okay? Like once a week.
Yes.
Once a week at the class, and then the other days I'm doing lean because yes, I love the idea of that accountability, and I do agree wellness thrives in community, especially for women. But I think of those spin classes, those people it's a little cultish. It can be a little.
Yes. But even like the vibe is different when you're in a room where music is blasting, there's energy, and then you have like after the class, there's something about like human exchange. And I think a lot of people thought there was going to be a shift in fitness and wellness coming out of the pandemic, thinking that like, oh, in-person gyms and boutique studios aren't going to live, when in reality, the way the way it boomed right back, people wanted like, it was cool to have like the convenience of doing your home, but there are some people who need to get away from their home and just need that time, even if it's an hour, to choose themselves. And sometimes it's harder to do it in the spaces where you're working, where your kids are, where you can easily be distracted. So yes, this is exactly why boutique gyms are just here to stay, period.
Yep.
What I'm also hearing is a healthy balance between competitiveness and comparison. Yes. Right? That starts to take place as well when you're thinking about that, because it can be motivating, depending on the type of person that you are. But it can also be debilitating if you're looking at it and it now becomes a barrier to you actually doing what you intended to do here.
I agree.
Yep.
Your rule of, I'd say the metric is always like inspiration. You want to be inspired versus feeling like you have to meet that person where they're at. Right? Because if someone's like hashtag goals, there's someone in that I'm gonna keep using the handstand as an example because listen, I can't do it. But I know that if there's someone that you see doing that, like there's a difference. If they inspire you to keep showing up to class to get to that point, then that's the type of energy. That's the energy you want in your life when it comes to having that level of community versus you shaming and having guilt that you're not making progress or moving fast enough. That's when it becomes like toxic for you, and we don't need that energy.
Yeah. No, and it could go the other way, right? You could go and be like, ooh, I got, I did this many and this other person could only do this. That's not healthy either. What's going to motivate you when somebody else is doing better than you, right? Like it goes both ways. So comparison in general, just let's not do that. Let's create our own hybrid model of working out, because that's what I'm going to call my plan. Go into the gym, come back out, right? Do whatever you got to do. It's consistency. That's the point. So we are wrapping up. We have a rapid fire little section of our podcast here at Good, Better, Betterness. I'm very excited. So hopefully you're ready. I mean, you on top of it. You are. You're on top. All right. Favorite healthy snack?
Ooh, I love apples dipped in peanut butter.
Me too. Wait, peanut butter or almond butter? Have you ever tried almond butter with it?
Yeah, I do interchangeably. It'll be both.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's like candy. I'd be like, oh. Go ahead, Denise.
What is your favorite song to get turned up to? Like, what gets you like, I'm going to the home gym and I'm getting it in today?
Girl is ratchet. Okay, the ratchetry comes
Love
out.
It.
Okay. I'd say so. DMX just always like riles me up. So it's all things DMX. The bark, it just makes you be like, okay, I'm about to go do this.
Wait, even when you said that, your voice went down into the DMX octave. Is that what it's called?
You said what?
Octave.
That's the octave, right?
Listen, you just got to get into character, right?
I mean, it said it in my head. Like, if you grew up in high school when DMX, or high school, college when DMX was doing his thing.
Yes, he was.
It was so funny. One of the other reasons I'm laughing is because I was talking to my mom a couple weeks ago, and she was like, "Yes, I love DMX," and I was like, "Oh, this must be some other Christian artist somewhere that now goes by DMX, because there's just no way." She was like, "No, DMX, the rapper."
Oh,
I said, "What?"
Of all rappers.
She was like, "No, I have a whole playlist." I'm so confused till to this day. I don't understand, but maybe listen, do what works for you. Okay, sleep or sweat? We know you love both, but you got to pick one.
Sweat.
Oh, now that's peanut butter. Yes, I love that.
All right. They say that, when you look good, you feel good, you tend to show up a little bit better. So what is your favorite workout outfit or line of clothing, athleisure that actually is used when you're sweating?
Line of, so I'm Under Armour ride or die. I love me, Under Armour ride or die. I love me like I love me a matching set. I believe, listen, you look good, you feel good. So for me, I'm the matching set fitness bae. I do believe fitness is a fashion show.
All right.
I stand.
I love it. I love it. I love a matching set too. It does help. I'm not gonna lie. Now I might put it on and then just sit in it all day, but hey, I have made the right decision to begin the habit.
Oh
I'm gonna do better. Right.
Hilarious.
Lastly, what is your go-to mantra for staying motivated? We said a couple of mantras, but what's your go-to one for?
My go-to is if it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you.
We'll say that again for the people.
Yeah, we need.
Yes. If it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you.
That's what I'm talking about. That's good, friend. Ooh, get comfortable with change because listen, that's what we need to do.
Not supposed to be
Love
easy.
it. Thank you.
Everybody will be doing it.
That part. That part.
Wow. That was one. What does it say? If it doesn't challenge you, it doesn't change you. Everybody just write that on your wall, on the top of your notebook, on the top of your journal, wherever you're looking every single day. That's a subtle reminder of, continue to challenge yourself. Such an informative and inspirational conversation that you led today. We are just absolutely thankful for you to join us today. Thanks for joining us on the Good, Better, Betterness podcast. Kayla, I'm going to hand it over to you to close us out.
Yes, of course. We want to make sure to give you the floor. So before you go, how can folks learn more about you, your amazing program, and connect with you on social media?
Yes, so you can find me at www.gymhooky.com. Outside of my programs, I also love just creating spaces for women to create themselves. That includes wellness retreats. If you're someone who needs a getaway or escape, definitely check that out. As far as where you can find me on social, I've been in these LinkedIn streets. You can find me Ariel Belgrave. Then there's also Instagram where I just continuously share wellness tips. So GYMHOOKY is my handle across the board. Say hi if there was anything that you were inspired by in this. Definitely let me know. Hit me up in the DMs. Don't be scared. I love to send voice notes.
Love that.
Yes, thank you so much. We'll definitely make sure that those links are referenced in the show notes. To the listeners, remember, you are worthy of feeling good in your own skin. We've given lots of tips here, but remember, lots of tips, lots of advice, lots of resources were dropped. But at the end of the day, pick one little thing and, start where you are. It doesn't matter. You don't have to do all of the things that we talked about today. You just have to start somewhere. Embrace your body, celebrate your own journey, and just keep showing up for yourself each and every day. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Good, Better, Betterness podcast. Be sure to subscribe to Good, Better, Betterness on Spotify. We're on YouTube. We're on Audible. Really, we're all the places where the podcast can be listened to. And if you subscribe, you're going to be joining us for lots of more informative and inspiring conversations. And if you feel motivated, make sure to leave us a review and let us know what you think.
Yes, we love reviews. We need reviews. If you think this information is necessary and helpful to you, it's necessary and helpful to others. So make sure to rate us, comment, all the things. Until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and keep striving towards a better you. Thank you so much, Ariel. We love you.
Thank you for having me.
Hey sis, we thank you for honoring yourself by taking the time to listen to the Good, Better, Betterness podcast. Thank you for joining us on the journey to betterness.